Okay, good morning. I have 8:01, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar today, Industry 4.0, How is Iowa Responding? So I'm Kim Betchika, I'm Vice President of Continuing Education and Training Services at Kirkwood Community College. And I am very pleased to be speaking today with 4 experts in the field willing to give us more information about the Industry 4.0 strategy that Iowa is investing in for the benefit really of all industries in Iowa, but specifically focusing on the manufacturing industry. And there was a recent report released by the Iowa Economic Development Authority that has many recommendations in it in terms of how we as a state can support manufacturers with their automation and digitization to continue to remain competitive, increase efficiencies and productivity, and at the same time, increase the skills of our workforce. So today, our 4 panelists with us are Nick Peterson from Alliant Energy, Mike O'Donnell from Cirrus, John Renning from Intolerance, and Amy Lasik with Kirkwood Community College. So we are going to try our best to keep this conversation informal, as Paulette has put in the chat. If you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat as we move forward with the questions for our panelists. So we are going to go ahead and get started. So Nick, thanks for joining us today. We are going to start off with you. So I'm going to turn it over to you just for provide us a brief introduction to your role and talk about Alliant's investment and support of Manufacturing 4.0.
Sure. Welcome everybody. I'm Nick Peterson. I am a Community Outreach Manager for Alliant Energy, and I work within our Economic and Community Development Department. And my role is to support all of our economic development activities with connecting to resources and understanding the things that are available within Iowa State University and those around them in the state, and kind of connecting our group and our businesses with those tools to support them. In terms of economic development within Alliant Energy, our focus, when it comes down to it, we have 3 core values that really kind of align with what we're doing in Industry 4.0, and it's making things better, acting for tomorrow, and thinking beyond and being bold in that thought process. And when we look at, we serve 83 of the 99 counties in the state. Manufacturing, like you mentioned, is one of our top economic drivers in the state. We continue to think about as a utilities provider, our responsibility to help strengthen and lift up our communities, and how we can do that through economic development. So we've really focused on, as a community as a company that's focused on community building and strengthening our communities, what do we need to do to help them adapt and continue to keep a competitive advantage in the economic drivers that the driver communities like manufacturing. And where can we go to support them as we deal with factors like low population growth, low unemployment, and other barriers to drive continued economic growth across the state.
Yeah, so Nick, thank you for that, bringing that tie back to economic development, right? Certainly the state absolutely wants to support our manufacturers, but it's all a piece of driving economic development, which then helps build our regions and our communities. So talk in particular about how you're partnering with the business community in the utilization of your digital manufacturing lab, and what I'm sure people are interested in knowing what technologies they can try out in the digital technology lab. That's very exciting.
Yes. So we were fortunate enough to realize that Alliant Energy can't solve problems on its own with the magnitude of integration of Industry 4.0 technologies. So we went to the people that know the most about it and are the subject matter experts, and that is my friend in the other Hollywood Square down here, Michael O'Donnell at Cirrus. Alliant Energy has been absolutely enthused to partner with Cirrus and Iowa State University to create the digital manufacturing lab powered by Alliant Energy. And the space is an amazing opportunity that Cirrus provides all companies across the state of Iowa the opportunity to really learn and understand Industry 4.0 technologies, understand how it can fit within their businesses, and how we can, both Alliant Energy, Iowa State, Cirrus, how we can support them in getting the tools to be successful and to drive that economic growth. The lab has a multitude of technologies available to it. Some of the major ones that that we've seen some interest in is 3D scanning, 3D printing, automation with cobots, collaborative robots, and then robots, autonomous vehicles. There's are just kind of the gateway into the Industry 4.0 technologies. I know Cirrus has got some plans for some new technologies that will be coming in over the next few months. But it's really, those are the main ones that we've identified in the early stages. And I know the Cirrus Group has more coming, but it's continuing to look at all of the different factors in Industry 4.0, whether it's Internet of Things, cybersecurity. It's really identifying what the needs are of the businesses and helping kind of guide those businesses to the resources that Cirrus has available. And Alliant, we're using our network, our key account managers, our economic development department, and our relationships across the state with different economic development organizations and our managed customers to really be able to connect those resources back to Cirrus and back to that digital lab to give them the opportunity to have that unbiased expertise to help support a business making those capital decisions and those decisions on how they integrate Industry 4.0 technologies in their companies.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that linkage to also be out there in the field helping your clients and manufacturers link up to other technical assistance, particularly available through Mike's shop at Cirrus. So I'm curious, Nick, because Alliant has a pretty big footprint in Iowa and Wisconsin. Do you have any information about how Wisconsin is approaching Industry 4.0?
Yeah, well, I would say, Wisconsin is very similar to Iowa in terms of the same issues facing their manufacturing community and economic community in terms of low population growth, low unemployment, some of those similar things that Iowa's facing. Our economic development department is working hand in hand with the state of Wisconsin's, as well as their MEP, which would be their equivalent of Mike O'Donnell. And I know, we've worked to try to partner with them on some Industry 4.0 things. I know COVID was a big blockade in kind of formalizing some of those things. I would say, not to rest on our laurels here in Iowa, but I would say we are probably a step ahead in terms of the collaboration as a state, whether it's working with Cirrus, working with the state of Iowa and the economic development department, working with the community colleges, starting to build that overall ecosystem of collaboration in the Industry 4.0 sphere. I would say right now, I would say Iowa's probably a step ahead. But again, that doesn't mean we should rest on our laurels and celebrate. We need to continue to figure out ways to continue to make us and our communities a competitive advantage in this very, very competitive field of advanced manufacturing.
Exactly. Yes. Good message there, but also really good to hear right? That we're on our way comparative to sister state right next to us. So Nick, just talk a little bit about how would anyone that's on the webinar today that wants to tour the digital lab or learn more about how they may or may not be able to experience some of those technologies, what should they do?
Definitely. If you're interested in learning more, you can go to alliantenergy.com/digital manufacturing lab, or you can go to Cirrus's website, cirrus@iastate.edu. Either one is going to provide a bevy of information. I know on our Alliant website, we've got some great videos to kind of get an understanding of the lab. On Cirrus's website, they've got some great upcoming webinars and events that you can get signed up for. In either way, you can reach out to us at Alliant Energy, whether it's my email, nickpeterson@alliantenergy.com, or work with Cirrus directly in trying to we can get you set up with a consultation and get you set up with the Industry 4.0 experts at Cirrus to kind of walk you through and understand your needs and get you started on your Industry 4.0 exploration.
Great, thank you, Nick. It's a awesome resource. Okay, so Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you now, even though, Nick stole your thunder a little bit. So provide us some background about Cirrus, but also, Mike, your leadership role that you're taking in the state to support Iowa's strategic investment in manufacturing 4.0.
Sure. For those who don't know Cirrus, we're the Center for Industrial Research and Service at Iowa State University. We provide services to businesses across the state in a variety of service areas, from growth to technology and everything in between. We work with a lot of different types of companies, but about 70% of our work is focused on small to mid-sized manufacturers. And that's really my role at Cirrus. I lead our manufacturing team, and our job is to help manufacturers see the future, understand what changes they need to make in order to kind of become globally competitive and maintain global competitiveness and implement those change. Our team is about 50 professionals from a variety of backgrounds with a couple of key things in common. First of all, we've been in your shoes. So almost every one of us has significant industry experience, and we've kind of been there, done that, and learned the hard lessons. And two, we love to give back. So our job is to help the rest of the state learn some of the lessons, see what's out there, and those types of things. When it comes to Industry 4.0, about 7 years ago, our team, one of our roles when we look at manufacturing, this is where our manufacturing extension partnership with MEP, what Nick mentioned, comes in, is one of our roles is our job is to be looking forward and seeing what's coming and making sure we have the base in Iowa to handle what's next. So when we looked forward, we started to say, hey, there's a whole bunch of new technologies that are right on the edge of being industry ready. And every one of these technologies could be really cool, really valuable, really disruptive. But in combination, not only did they have massive change opportunity, but they also had the chance to really, really disadvantage companies who weren't ready. So we stopped and said, hey, those who are ready are going to win, and those who aren't are going to be in trouble. So we better get ready to help everybody get ready. So we have been dabbling in this space that over the last few years has really become called Industry 4.0 for about 7 years now, and trying to understand what's out there, what's changing, and that kind of stuff. And the really important thing, and this is our key message, and I know many of you panelists have heard us say this before, Industry 4.0 has cool technologies, right? They're fun things to see, they're neat things to see, but that's not why it's important. It's important is that there are new tools out there that can solve old problems, potentially much better than you've ever been able to solve them, and potentially at even much lower costs. So Industry 4.0 is really focused on a set of solutions to problems and not just technology for the sake of technology. So that's really, really important as you look into it.
Right.
Uh,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Mike. No,
I
go
was just
ahead.
going to say that from the statewide role, one of the things that we know is Industry 4.0, and Nick said this too, is too big for any one person, organization, anything to do on their own. So our role is to be a cheerleader out there saying, we all need to be in this. It matters, it's important, and we need to find ways for us to all to work together to figure out and help companies implement Industry 4.0.
Great, Mike. I really like that comment about helping industries that aren't ready to be ready, but not for technology's sake, right?
Yeah.
Ensuring that there is a solution there. So, Mike, I've heard you talk about 3 broad focus areas as it relates in particular to manufacturing 4.0. And also we use industry and manufacturing 4.0 somewhat interchangeably. So I don't want to confuse our panelists. Industry is more broad over all industries. And then certainly we're focusing specifically on manufacturing to get us going. So talk with us about those focus areas: design and testing, producing and performing, and managing information. What's involved with the solutions in those areas that manufacturers may find beneficial?
So all of them,
Mhm.
one of the keys here, when you're looking at the entire suite of Industry 4.0, is that you're able to connect the digital and physical worlds. And that changes the way you can approach things. So when you're in the design phase, when you're talking about how you design and develop products, the old approach of building prototypes in traditional ways and designing a production line and hoping everything comes together just perfectly, right? There are new sets of tools in place that can help you digitally test your tools, run simulations on it, design your factory virtually before you design it in reality, right? Before you start digging a hole in the ground, you can simulate factories now. Those are huge opportunities on the digital side. From the production and process side, we have major opportunities to rethink how we make things. Industry 4.0 gives you tools and technologies to do things that you've never been able to do, right? So 3D printing is a popular one out there. And from one side, it lets you build things that you couldn't build using traditional tools and approaches. One of my favorite implementations of 3D printing isn't on printing products for people, but it's printing tools for your own factory. So things like, if I'm tired of waiting 6 weeks for my local job shop to make a tool for me, or even worse, waiting 3 months for a tool to come from China, print your own tool until that new one shows up. Those are some of the really neat things on the production and process side. But then the third side, the information, right? We have the ability and capability to connect information throughout the entire life cycle of a product, from the design to production, and seeing if your production is what you design, right? And then getting life cycle information, that type of stuff, and making faster and faster and faster decisions. Now, all 3 of those, the problem is if those are huge, massive structural changes to any business to look like that, you are very rarely going to be able to implement that as is. And the key is not saying, how can I reimagine my whole business and start from scratch? That's too big of a bite to take off. The real key that we look for is in those elements, how can you go through and start to say, what is a problem I have in my business that I really wish I could solve? And then diving into that problem and asking the question, are there any technologies that could help us there, right? So if one of my problems is, how can I get people on the shop floor trained faster? And you can ask questions about virtual reality, about augmented reality, about better ways to use data, right? That information that comes from your systems to give feedback to employees so that they know real time if they're learning. Those are some of the key things you can do in Industry 4.0. So there's those great possibilities, and they call them lighthouses of Industry 4.0, where people have built these these massive new factories from scratch that totally changed the way we think about manufacturing. But that's not how you get there from a current manufacturer. It's really about taking the baby steps to solve problems.
Great, great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for putting that in context, because when you look at all of the variety of technologies, right, it's like how do we start in that area? Talk a little bit about, Nick had talked about too, how the state really is coming together collaboratively to help our industries implement the appropriate and the just-in-time automation and technologies, as to why that integration of service providers and resources is important. So maybe talk a little bit about the Industry 4.0 collaboration.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about Iowa when I talk to my counterparts in different states is we work together really well. We always have, we have our own expertise areas, and we're good at referring things to each other, but we didn't have what is really required to jump into Industry 4.0, which is a big, strong commitment to saying, we're going here and we're all in and we're ready to go. And that's really what this collaboration is. So I don't think I've been with Cirrus for about 12 years. I don't think I have ever seen anything where Cirrus, all 15 community colleges, 3 state agencies, the Association of Business and Industry, Professional Developers of Iowa, UNI, I think I've got them all there, all signed a single agreement where we said, we're gonna work together. And it is both a broad agreement that says we commit to working together, we commit to putting time and resources to understanding and bringing Industry 4.0 to companies. And then even more specifically, we agree to develop educational content and materials to help people throughout the state understand how you actually implement Industry 4.0. And so if you look, and Nick mentioned our friends up in Wisconsin there, they keep calling and saying, hey, what are you guys all doing down there? Because you're moving too fast for us. So that's a good spot to be. We have people who are engaged and committed across the state to figuring this out. And I think as we go deeper and deeper into Industry 4.0, that's the key, is how do we figure this out? How do we work together? There is no one organization that's going to solve this problem.
Right. And I have worked with you in the collaborative, and I think it really helps us for urban and rural to receive the same technical support, education, and training consistently throughout the state. And I know that's what excites us here at Kirkwood as well, is that we know we'll have resources that are consistent among our peers to help our industries. So Mike, there might be people on the webinar that are like, I'd like to reach out to Cirrus and engage with them. How do you suggest they do that?
Absolutely. Just hop onto our website. It's cirrus.iastate.edu. And in the top right, there's a contact us button. You can fill out that really short form that just asks for your name and what you're looking for. And we will have somebody right in touch with you. Your alternative is to your local account manager, or really anybody on this call knows us, right? So there are lots of ways into Cirrus. So please feel free to reach out and we'd be glad to help.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And thanks again for your leadership very much. John, okay, we're gonna transfer over to you. So thank you for joining us today. So, talk about your role at Intolerance and tell us a bit more about your company.
All right. Good morning. Mike and Nick set it up pretty well. So I'm John Renning. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Intolerance. Just a little bit of background on Intolerance. We're a manufacturing company, a CNC manufacturing company. We've been around since about 1947 and kind of grew up with Rockwell Collins. And since then have really diversified our business across, the country and the world, I guess. We changed over to Intolerance about 1987. And we have done a good job, I think, of investing in our company overall. But really the key components are for aerospace and defense market. We make, just CNC parts, and then we also do some finished processing here as well.
Right. So highly precision parts and processes, right? If I remember right. working in this defense contract area. So John, talk to us about Intolerance's approach to 4.0 and why is it important to your company, in particular your customers?
Yeah, so Mike kind of hit it right on the head with solutions to problems. So that's how we approached 4.0 was with just solutions to problems, because as he talked about, you can't just change your whole company over. It's just not practical without unlimited, dollars and cents. So we just looked at solutions to problems and really looking at it from a data analytics standpoint. So like, what are our problems, and trying to use all the information that we had to kind of figure out what our real problems were. So you have your gut feeling, which is great, and it works, 80% of the time, but it's really nice to back that gut feeling up with data analytics. So with this Industry 4.0, we have the ability to pull in all the information and really look at, the Pareto of why things aren't working, and then solve problems that way. So we really use that to just overall better decision making. What are we going to go buy? What is right for us? We use it to increase efficiency on the shop floor. So we looked at, the main thing for us is how much our spindles run on our CNC machines. And so if our spindles could run 100% of the time, we'd be basically just making money all the time. And that's really what we look for, is that spindle time. But without the ability to fuse all that data, we can't really tell what machines run that much. And, you kind of have a feeling, but you don't really know. And so if you can pull that data together on spindle time, you can look at what is beneath that. So why isn't this machine running, or why is this, and then dig down and try and solve those problems. It also helps us from, quoting perspective, just tying in the information. We quote things and we don't always get it right. We don't have the luxury to go back to our customer later on and say, hey, we messed that up. We're going to have an extra couple $100 per part. We have to live with what we live with. So we fuse that data back in from our operators and really do a live update to our quotes. So the next time we actually get it right. And then the other approach is automation. So once we have this data analytics portion and this piece of the puzzle, then the automation comes in. So we've looked at, ways to increase capacity, just keep up with our competition. So the biggest thing for our customers is cost right now. So they have a bunch of different customers that they can go out to, and we have to continually be cost effective and cost competitive. So if you're just staying in the moment, you just can't live with the environment going on. So as you heard, people in Wisconsin, people in Illinois, people in Taiwan, people in Mexico, you're competing with lower labor rates, you're competing with, just closeness to business, all those types of things. So you have to do some sort of automation and continual improvement throughout. And then, we looked at the highest, best use of our employees as well. So that, what is the best use of our employees? So here we have very, very experienced employees, and, how do we get them to use their tools and tricks and all that kind of stuff, the best ways to be, to use this automation to kind of get better. Off machine programming, all that type of thing. And the benefit to our customers is that, cost is a big one. If you look at the results, on-time delivery, the ability to batch produce a large amount of product and get that out the door, and then also store it on the shelf. So we're not necessarily just in time here at Intolerance. We invest in inventory for, customer flexibility, but that inventory is also created with the most efficient build process, which automation allows us to build. Instead of 10 pieces at a time, it allows us to build 1,000 pieces, sending it out once in a freight package to an outside service to have plating done, and then all the way back. And then we can put it on the shelf. So it allows our customers to push in, pull out as things flex. It also allows for better quality. So once we have the first batch through with a customer, we know everything is on the shelf is great. We know from our internal quality. So that allows us to just make things over and over the same way every time. So they get that type of uniformity as well. And so, that's really the benefit to our customer, that cost competitiveness. We're in it, with them as a partner, and they see it. I think they see it that way overall.
Right. So, John, a couple follow-up questions. So, you talked about many areas that your company has focused on related to back to what Mike talked about in some of the broad buckets of technologies. So, we had your use of data analytics to then improve your spindle time and your quote accuracy. And then automation as a way to improve cost effectiveness, which sometimes I think about the expensiveness of automation. So wouldn't that raise your cost PERS, so to speak? So maybe if you could just dive into each of those areas a little bit more, like I wonder about, okay, what was your process to bring all of this data analytics together? I'm assuming it was an additional communications platform or integrated system platform that you invested in. Can you talk a little bit about the how-to of those two areas?
So we were pretty lucky. Our owner is very, he is very much into investment in the company and also getting ahead. So about, I don't know, it's probably 30 years ago when he took over, he worked with the U.S. Navy and some other government programs to develop this ERP system. One of probably the fundamental ERP systems, as we grew out, certainly not an SAP or anything like that, but it was actually internally built and customized. So that atmosphere, that I guess continual improvement, that mindset, that culture has really been at Intolerance the entire time. And the system was great. I mean, it did a lot of things and it was just tailored for our business, and it was really nice. About 4 years ago, we switched over to a new ERP system because the old one is based on Fox Pro, which I don't even know what that is, but it's really old and nobody likes to support it. So we looked at something that could really support our business going forward. So 4 years, we've switched over to a new platform, Plex, out of Michigan. It was really built for the car industry. It's not a financial platform. It's not an HR platform. It's really built around technology and manufacturing. So that's the core of how we do business. It allowed everybody in the office to really back each other up. So we're a small administrative group, and it allowed those people to back each other up. And it also allowed us to see what was going on in our business. So it was very easy to link in these modules. We're also lucky to have a partnership with a local company, Letter B, and they do a lot of just small module applet development for Plex. It's very easy to break in with those guys. And then we have some smart people in house too. So we've been able to do it very cost effectively. We're not spending millions of dollars on, this type of data analytics. We just brought in these small little things and done them as solutions to problems, as Mike talked about. And that has really built into a cluster over the last 4 years of the ability to see what's going on the shop floor and really back up what you feel in your gut. We did a small program with the University of Iowa as well with Nick Street and his, big data kind of group down there, which was very interesting. So they came in and just looked at data streams and told us, hey, if you look at this data stream, and we were looking at rejects, like how we get rejects. And so they looked at the data streams of all the rejects compared to the data streams of all the good parts that we sent out. And they saw anomalies, which allowed us to correct information, correct things there. And it was a small thing, but it's just little things that can, help you out along the way. So that's kind of the data analytics side of thing. Your other question, I probably forgot, but more on
how automation. So maybe how now your data analytics has informed how you can automate the spindle process, or, talk maybe about an example there.
Yeah, like the biggest thing for automation for us was, again, solutions to problems. So once the data analytics found the solutions, we figured out how to make our spindles run faster. So we started out slow. So it was a crawl, walk, run kind of process. And we said, we're just going to go out and get, a machine that can do one and done, basically a lathe that does 2 operations sides instead of 1. And that, just to see how much we could utilize that. I just want to say before the automation piece is probably the most important thing about this industry 4.0 is the people and the culture that you have. So if you go out and invest in a machine, which we did once, we invested in a CMM and really asked nobody from quality, hey, would you ever use this thing? And we just brought it in and set it on the desk, and it sat on the desk for 6 years, and we finally sold it. But the key is really that engagement of the people. So if you come in, and tour Intolerance, which we invite anybody to come tour our place, you'll see the people here, what the key process of it. So we looked at these one and done environments, and we said, hey, who would take hold of this, right? And we brought in our lathe specialist, and they sat down with us and they designed what does this work center look like? And they were a part of that entire process. So when the machine came, they were all set to go, and they knew what was coming. In fact, 2, 3, 4 months before the machine got there, they were on YouTube, they were on, any platform we could get to learn more about the process. So they really, took it and internalized the process for themselves. Another one is, we had a robot. We went from the kind of the one and done to actually having some robots. And we looked at like programming optical, something that could take a red, jelly bean out of a jar and leave all the other ones there, that kind of stuff. And really came down when we asked our operators, just because we're a job shop and we change over multiple jobs very quickly. And they said, you know what, you need like some tech guy who's going to sit for, 5 days and design something for each job. And that's just not going to work for us. And so we went back to the easy switchover stuff and said, okay, we just need a robot that's going to take this out and put it back. And we need to be able to switch that, between jobs over and over again. And you get the buy-in from the people to do that. And you look at how it's going to solve your problem. And, continually, they just do things every day. I mean, they make that cell amazing. So I can't be out there every day, and they're the ones that do it. So that continual improvement mindset, they design their own claws for the robots. They design their own fixturing. They, got different ways to unload and load the robots. And behind that is, we went local too. So it was local support. So you think about robots, you don't have to go to Silicon Valley or, whatever you think of when you think of robots. We went to Cascade, Iowa, and they were fantastic. The service and support and just the overall support of our business. They're just as much engaged with our business as, we are, because they like to see their things succeed. So it was, that's important too, I think, is that you have, and it's right here in Iowa. I mean, all this information, all this ability, through Cirrus. We worked with Cirrus several times in the past, for those types of things too. And the nice thing about Iowa is, like they were saying, it's all right here. You just kind of have to look a little bit.
Great. Thanks, John, for bringing that home for us. I'm going to key off your people and culture statement, because that is so critical. And that's a great segue to Amy Lasik with Kirkwood Community College. So Amy, talk about your role here at Kirkwood, and why is it important for Kirkwood to also be a part of this collaboration and support of the strategy for Industry 4.0?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Amy Lasik. I'm the Executive Director of Continuing Education and Training. And one of the things that we do is work hand in hand with business and industry to make sure that they are thriving, that any pinch points that they have are being addressed. And that can mean a variety of things. And it's important for us at Kirkwood to have a thriving business environment for a lot of reasons. But first and foremost, our students are going to be your future employees. And so if you're not thriving, our students aren't going to thrive when they leave here. And we want to make sure that they are successful in the future as well. So it's a very synergy between business, industry, Kirkwood, and our students. And it's a nice ecosystem that we want to make sure everybody is successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So in the IEDA, Iowa Economic Development Authority study from Ball State, they talked about that in every county in Iowa has between 50 to 61% of jobs with automation potential. So my question, Amy, is what do you suggest businesses do to continue to invest in, if they're going to invest in automation, what does that mean for the skill needs of their workforce? And I think that goes back to that whole people and culture thing.
Yeah, really good question. And we've heard for a long time the term of middle skills gap, right? For years, and matching the skills to the open positions that are out there. I think what 4.0 is doing is amplifying that need even further, both for job seekers and educational institutions and for employers. For educational institutions and for job seekers, there's a need to make sure that those 4.0 concepts are included in the training and the skill upgrading that they are doing. So when they're ready to be employed by an employer, they at least have that base knowledge and understanding of some of these key concepts. For employers, it's really important to keep the skill upgrading of your current staff front and center. 4.0 is changing drastically and quickly. It's going to look different in 1 year as it does right now. So now is not the time to cut training budgets. Now is not the time to put training on hold for another year. Because in 1 year, if you put something on hold, our employers in other states and in other countries are addressing some of those efficiency issues and some of the concepts in 4.0. And all of a sudden, the manufacturers in Iowa are going to be left behind. And that's not what we want to happen. So it's a really important for manufacturers to take a look at not only implementing these pieces, but as John talked about, looking at ways to really incorporating it into the culture of continuous improvement and the culture of involving their employees into the concepts of 4.0.
Great. So you work a lot with manufacturers, and I know you're in tune with some of the growing pains that you're seeing right now in our manufacturing community, and definitely speak to what we're hearing in the workforce shortage area. So, what are you seeing? And then how do you think that ties into what we're working on now related to the Industry 4.0 skill needs of the workforce and future workforce?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it already in different concepts, but really what we're hearing from manufacturers is two different skill pain points, right? Workforce and efficiencies. And John talked a lot about the efficiency piece of it as well. Our manufacturers, I'm hearing from all of them that they're busy. They have orders coming in, but they're short-staffed at the same time. So they're just treading water to stay up on those orders. So making the time to learn about 4.0, making the time to implement some of these strategies and do the training with their staff has been difficult this last year. I'm thankful that our manufacturers are so busy. I think that's great. But what I worry about is when will this catch up? When will this putting pause on upgrading and implementing new things, when will that catch up? And when will that impact the bottom line of our employers? So that to me is kind of my sense of urgency message to folks, is making sure that we're staying on top, making the time for those upgrades that we'll need.
Right.
Secondly, I know there's a lot of concern about resources and the cost of investing those 4.0 technologies into our employers. And that's where I really appreciated what John and Mike were talking about at looking at addressing the problem. It's an investment up front to address a problem that in the long term will pay off for our employers. So the good news is that there's resources out there available to help break down the costs for investment in equipment, investment in training, and those are things that can really assist employers in the long run.
Yeah. So just kind of like with John, when he was talking about data analytics and automation and then gave some specific examples, talk about specific, I know you're working on the curriculum committee with the the Industry 4.0 collaboration. So maybe you can share some specific individuals, some specifics about training, topic areas or focus areas employers might want to consider as they're on their journey to learning more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it could be, we do a variety of different training things at Kirkwood Corporate Training. A lot of times that means customized automation training, customized cybersecurity training, AR, VR. These are things that we can bring on site to assist with employers, or we can do something virtually. Really, we work hand in hand with the employers to figure out what is it that you're needing. Our goal is to make sure that an employer doesn't feel alone in this entire process. I think it was Mike that said 4.0 is a big thing. And it is, and it can be very overwhelming. And our goal is to make sure that we help you not feel lost. So even if you don't know where to start, we can help you get connected to CERIS. We can help you get connected to the right subject matter experts to do some of those trainings. And then, as John said, people and culture, big part of it. If you don't have the people and culture set to make some of these big strategic changes, that is something that we can assist with as well. So coming in and working with your top management to get everybody on board and on the same page, and then pushing it down to where it is needed. Those are things that we can help with.
Great. Thanks for tying that all together. I think that's so, what's so great about the division that Amy leads is that concept of you're not in it alone, because they can bring all the learnings that they have with the variety of industries they've been working together, and also help employers connect with other employers in certain areas. So that's just an awesome service. So that's kind of our questions to all the panelists. I have one kind of wrap up question for us to all just dialogue on. And that's related to as manufacturers start moving forward or accelerating their Industry 4.0 strategies, they may realize some barriers to determining this effective implementation and integration of 4.0. So what might those barriers be that you're aware of? And do you have any suggestions for what an organization could do when they run into that barrier area versus stop and say, yeah, this isn't for us? So let's dialogue about that for just a little bit.
Well, Kim, I can jump in just briefly. One of the things that we hear from employers is, this is something that's important to us, but we only really have we're a small manufacturer. We only really have 1 or 2 people that need to go through this training. It's not cost effective for us at this point in time. I would say for manufacturers that are in that boat is communicate with us. Let us know that, because you're probably not the only manufacturer in that boat. If we can link up 4 or 5 manufacturers that have one person they want to train in AR, VR, then we can create a consortium of employers together. We can hook you up with some funding opportunities. There's opportunities for us to make sure you're not stopped because you feel like it's a financial barrier for you.
Yeah, great idea.
I think
Mike, okay, John, go ahead.
I think one of the hardest parts for us is when we have that continual improvement and that culture, and then we started to do all these 4.0 types of things. It was everybody got so on board that it was hard to control it. So, you had to you couldn't say, hey, that's a bad idea, we're not going to go do that. But you had to stay in the solutions to problems, and you had to funnel and focus that effort and that, there's a lot of energy. So it wasn't like running into barriers. It's like, okay, there's all these ideas. Which ones do we focus on? And how do we make sure that we're not shutting down our employees? We're, continually asking for their input. So that's the hardest part that we found, because there's so many areas that you can solve problems with that you just have to focus now once you have that energy going.
Yeah, good point, John. That's right. Lots of ideas and stay focused to keep things moving forward. Mike or Nick, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll jump on what John said. Lots of ideas. One of the challenges that companies tend to have is they have an idea for a cool technology that might solve a problem, and then they go get a quote and it's 10 times what they thought it was going to be. And the challenge there is really goes back to the fundamentals. Do you understand your process? Do you understand your needs, right? And sometimes you need to get back to the basics, right? So Industry 4.0 has really great opportunities, but it comes down to, do you understand how you're making things, what you need to make, how that will change over time, and can you enunciate that to somebody who can provide a technology solution? Because maybe you don't need these really cool cobots that are out there. Maybe you need a simple, cheap, actuated cylinder or something like that, right? There's a lot of different solutions out there. So make sure you go back to your fundamentals of, how do I make my product? What are the key measures that I need to achieve? And how's that going to change over the future? And if you can enunciate that better, you're going to get much, much more accurate solutions to your problems.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Always go back to our fundamentals, right, as we make decisions. Nick, how about you?
Yeah, I would just add on to that. John mentioned earlier, finding the small problems in his company and taking the bite size out instead of trying to transform everything at once. Mike had mentioned that. I think that goes back to what Mike was just saying is, finding those small problems and then being willing to ask for help, in knowing that there are resources like the experts at Cirrus to kind of walk through those things. I think the thing that we see the most in the digital manufacturing lab that I hear from our counterparts is, the idea that, the technology is one price, the implementation and the training is another price. And what I love about our group and our collaboration is when we're walking through that with an organization and they're guiding those, helping to make those decisions, it's asking, just like Mike said, do you really need this technology? None of us are here to sell that technology. We're here to make sure that it fits right for your business so you have economic growth. And then, if the technology is right, are you understanding the complete cost of integrating that into your business and making sure that it's not just the capital cost for the physical technology, but it's the training costs of working with, somebody like Amy's group, or, understanding the programming that's going to go into it, that's going to be on top of just the physical cost, and understanding that. So before you're making those purchases or making those investments, understanding that complete picture of what it is going to take that step forward, so that when you do it, you don't have those regrets, or you understand the full implementation that it's going to take. And then I think it goes to the next part, like John mentioned earlier, of making sure that you have your employees bought into whatever you're doing, and creating that culture where it's an inviting one to the adoption.
Right. Thanks, Nick. You actually made a couple statements there that segue into what our final webinar is related to, in terms of some of the resources that are available and how to get that foundational assessment. Is this the right automation to purchase? Will be necessary to access some resources that we have. So thanks for that plug for our next webinar as well. So Paulette, I'm going to ask you if there are any questions in the chat now. If any of our panelists have any questions, or any of our participants to ask of our panelists.
The chat box is open, so I invite people to type away.
Kim, while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, can I do a plug for our business roundtable?
Sure.
So Kim mentioned earlier in the webinar that we will be holding a couple of business roundtables with employers in our region to learn a little bit more about where you are with 4.0. And we will be sending out formal invitations to folks. But if you're on this webinar and you're interested in being a part of that, I would encourage you to get a hold of any of us. And we would be able to get you signed up for that webinar. Tentatively right now, we have the date held for September 15th or September 16th in the morning. So if you're interested, please get a hold of us. We'll make sure you're invited.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Excellent. Paulette, any questions?
None at this time.
Okay, so again, thank you panelists for being so open and sharing your information today. Lots of really solid themes for our attendees. And we'll also send this recording out to our attendees, but also our customers that we have through Kirkwood, so they can have access to this knowledge if they weren't able to attend the webinar. So, several themes for us today, right? For me, being in the workforce world in particular, is that people, culture, skills need, but also how do you bring about and identify the correct, the problem and the analytics to that problem to ensure your investments will pay off for you and go as smoothly as possible. So just great themes today, great knowledge that's been provided. So thank you again, panelists, for being with us. To our webinar participants, we do have our final webinar in the series, which is August 11th, which is going to be focusing on resources, financial assistance, and grants that are available to potentially assist you in starting your journey or accelerating your journey into automation and digitization for the benefit of efficiencies and production of your organizations. So thank you all, and hope to see you all back with us on August 11th. Thanks, panelists, very much.
Thank you.
Appreciated it.